So, in the last lecture, we discussed about the concept of a Cooper pair, which is the fundamental charge carrying unit in a superconductor. It is basically a paired state of electrons with equal and opposite momenta and spins. So, the first incoming electron excites a phononic vibration. Okay, it excites a phonon, which creates a vibration in the lattice and generates a positive charge fluctuation, which before the positive charge fluctuation decays out, the second incoming electron comes in and gets attracted to the positive charge cloud. And basically you have the first incoming electron which excites a phonon, and the second incoming electron accepts that phonon, and the two interact these phonons and get effectively attracted to each other through the BCS attractive potential, which we have discussed earlier. Okay, and this gives rise to the fundamental charge carrying unity, which is a unit which is called the Cooper pair. It's a paired state of two electrons, and every electron inside the superconductor is likewise paired to every other electron. Okay, and hence the entire superconducting state is a completely coupled interacting state, because every electron is paired to another electron in the superconducting state. So at t equal to 0, you have all electrons which are paired up. You don't have any single electron which is not paired up. It's not that electron A has to permanently remain paired to the electron B. Okay, the pairs are continuously forming and breaking, but at every point of time, every electron is paired to another electron, and that's the important thing. Okay, so an electron with a certain momentum k and a spin will immediately pair up with another electron with an opposite momentum and spin, and that is done through the entire. So each electron is not free to do what it wants. It is paired to another electron, and this electron in turn gets paired to another electron, and so on. So the entire system behaves as one single unit. It's a macroscopic quantum state. And the fundamental charge carrying unit is a Cooper pair, which is a paired state of two electrons. We will come back to this concept of the BCS theory when we do the working out of the BCS theory, but for now let us change gears slightly. And let us come to the concept of type 1 and type 2 superconductors, and let us look at this in a little bit more details. So as we have already discussed that depending on the behavior of magnetization, if you look at our lectures on thermodynamics, we have already introduced type 1 and type 2 superconductors based on the magnetization response. We will look at it again very shortly. However, there are basically two different types of superconductors, and we will see what are the distinguishing features of these two types. Superconductors come in two different flavors, type 1 and type 2. For example, if you look at lead is a type 1 superconductor, and if you go to niobium is a type 2 superconductor. The magnetization responses of type 1 and type 2 superconductor as a function of magnetic field are very different from each other. So what is that distinguishes type 1 and type 2 superconductors? That's the question that we will explore in a little bit more details in this lecture. So before we ask that question, we can ask, what are the typical fundamental length scales associated with a superconductor? This is a very important question, that what are the characteristic fundamental length scales associated with a superconductor? And the first length scale that we have already been introduced through the London's equation is the superconducting penetration depth lambda, where lambda is equal to the mass of the it's not of the electron now. You should remember that the charge carrying unit is a Cooper pair. So this is the mass of the Cooper pair. Ns is the density of electrons. E square is the charge of the Cooper pair, and of course mu naught is the unit, is the magnetic permeability. So for a superconductor, the charge basically is 2e, and the mass is twice of mass of an electron. So the lambda, basically, if you write it in terms of mass of an individual electron, for m you will have to replace as twice of me, and for the charge of the electron, you don't have charge of the electron in the superconducting state, but you have twice of e, because the charge carrying unit is a Cooper pair. So lambda is equal to m by twice of ns e square mu naught. This is your, if this has become too small, let me tell you that this is your density of electrons or charge carriers inside the system, and E square is your so if you substitute it here, this is what your penetration depth is, and lambda I'm sorry, I will just correct myself, lambda square, this is lambda square is equal to, now if you write it in terms of electrons, then this is what it turns out to be. And if you recall, the physical interpretation of lambda was that whether you apply your AC or DC field to a superconductor, the application of a magnetic field to the superconductor results in very strong diamagnetic shielding current set up in the superconductor. So if this is your superconductor material and this is your normal material, then and this is the interface, then if you apply a magnetic field, then of course you are applying a magnetic field outside, and inside the superconductor the magnetic field is going to exponentially die out. Inside the superconductor, this magnetic field is going to die out over a distance lambda, and lambda is typically of the order of few tens to hundreds of nanometers. So this is your superconducting penetration depth, because it is the distance over which the magnetic field can actually penetrate into the perfectly diamagnetic superconductor. Now let us discuss another important length scale, which is what is the size of the Cooper pair, and this brings us to the concept of coherence length. So if you recall that the Cooper pair is a paired state of electrons which have equal and opposite momenta and equal and opposite spins, and they are exchanging phonons with each other. So the typical distance, the fundamental distance over which, and these Cooper pairs have a particular size. So you can also consider this as the distance, the smallest distance over which superconductivity can exist, because Cooper pairs are the fundamental charge carrying units which maintain superconductivity. So xi is also the distance over which superconductivity is a fundamental distance over which is the minimum distance over which you can maintain superconductivity. These Cooper pairs remain coherent, okay, over a distance xi. Okay, this is the fundamental size of the Cooper pair. And so what is this distance scale xi? This is the smallest distance over which you can maintain superconductivity over the system. Okay, so let us get an estimate of this xi. How does one estimate it? So this is a crude way of estimating xi. I'll give you a simple crude way of estimating the size of the Cooper pair. So these are the lattice planes, and let us consider an incoming electron. This incoming electron, when it passes through the region of a lattice and goes out, in its wake it creates this lattice distortion. You can see this lattice distortion here, okay, which has been generated by the electron. So when the incoming electron passes through this lattice, it causes a phononic vibration, and this phononic vibration essentially, it first creates a lattice distortion, okay, and this distortion is retained for a certain instant of time. Okay, the lattice will distort, it will try to screen the charge that has come in, therefore it will undergo a distortion, or it will create a lattice vibration, and then the electron has passed through. What will happen is that these ions will again go back to their original position. So they will fluctuate and then go back to their original position. So the charge fluctuation which is created will be retained for a certain instant of time. For certain amount of time there will be a positive charge fluctuation which will increase and then again decrease, or if you look at the amplitude of vibration, it will increase and then again go back to its original position, it will decrease, and this takes a certain amount of time, and in this time interval the electron has moved a certain distance d. So you can estimate how much is the distance which is traveled by the electron. So we can try and estimate how much is the distance traveled by the electron before the positive charge fluctuation created by it decays out. Okay, you can calculate how much is the distance which the electron travels in the time interval of this positive charge fluctuation. So let us estimate this d. So the positive charge fluctuation occurs over a time scale which is 2 pi by omega d Omega d, if you know, if you recall, is the Debye frequency. This is the frequency with which the positive ions are vibrating, or the positive charge ions of the lattice are vibrating. So the positive charge fluctuation, or the typical time interval over which there is a fluctuation, that is of the order of 2 pi by omega d. It is governed by the frequency, the ionic lattice vibration frequency. So the charge fluctuation disappears over a typical time interval, which is 2 pi by d, because these ions have to come in and then again move back to the charge neutral position. So when they come in, there is a positive charge, and when they move back to their original position, they retain. So this time interval, this coming from this thing and going back, is typically 2 pi by omega d. This is the time interval of the positive charge fluctuation. So this is what is represented here. The electron comes in, the ions, when the electron comes in, the ions which are shown in these red circles, they were originally in their charge neutral position. When the electron comes in, they leave their charge neutral positions, and therefore they try to shield the electronic charge by creating this positive charge cloud, and in doing so they actually leave their charge neutral positions and creates a positive charge cloud, a positive charge fluctuation. And the electron moves back, and then the positive charge cloud also go back to the charge neutral position, and the time interval it typically takes to come here and go back, this typical time scale is 2 pi by omega d. And how much is the distance which is traveled in this time interval? That is basically your small d, which is Vf, which is the speed of the electron, okay, which is your Fermi velocity, into 2 pi by d, this time scale. Vf is the Fermi velocity, which is the typical average velocity with which electrons inside the solid are moving around. So therefore the electron moves over a distance d, which is Vf by 2 pi by d, before the charge fluctuation disappears. So the Cooper pairs typically have a separation of d. This is the typical separation between two electrons inside a lattice. So for a Cooper pair to exist, if one electron creates a charge fluctuation, the second electron has to be within a distance d separation from the first electron for it to get attracted to the other electron. Because if it is at a distance more than d, if the two electrons are separated by a distance which is more than d, so if you have the two electrons which are separated by a distance which is greater than d, then the charge fluctuation which is created between them would have relaxed out. There is no charge fluctuation between them, because only over a distance d there is a positive charge fluctuation. For a distance which is much larger than d, there is no charge fluctuation between the two electrons, and hence there is no interaction between the electrons. So this gives rise to the typical size of the Cooper pair. The typical size of the Cooper pair is of the order of, the typical size of the Cooper pair this d is actually written as this symbol psi, which is Vf by 2 pi by omega d. You can also write it as h cross Vf to 2 pi by omega d. And if you recall, the size of the superconducting energy gap is of the order of h cross omega d. So this gives you an estimate of your coherence length, which is hVf by delta. This is the typical size of your Cooper pair, which is called the superconducting coherence length. The name for Xi is It's called the superconducting coherence length. It is the typical size of the Cooper pair. It also represents the smallest distance over which the superconductivity is maintained. Okay. So typically, if you go close to a superconducting normal interface, so if you have an interface which separates a superconducting region and a normal region, then the superconductivity, so this interface is typically not a very it's not a very sharp boundary, because the superconductivity is typically lost over a distance the superconducting state is not maintained uniformly, but typically as you approach the interface, it's not like it's a delta function like interface. The superconductivity ends here and the normal region begins here. The typical distance over which the superconductivity is lost and the normal region begins, that typical distance is this coherence length scale, because pairs are actually getting destroyed over this distance xi. So over this distance length scale xi, you have the pairs which are actually getting destroyed, and you are getting single electronic state which are entering into the normal state. So this is a very fuzzy region. The normal superconducting region is, and it is so if you look at the density of Cooper pairs, this is the density of Cooper pairs. This density of Cooper pairs is of course finite deep in the superconducting state, but then as you enter into this normal superconducting interface, over this window, over this distance which is the coherence length xi, the superconductivity is lost. So this gives rise to a very important concept in the superconductor, that for superconductors, apart from the superconducting penetration depth, there is an additional length scale which is the coherence length scale. So your superconductors are basically composed of, have two fundamental length scales, lambda and xi. Your superconductors are made up of two important length scales which are lambda and xi. Every superconductor is actually attached to two important length scales, where lambda is the superconducting penetration depth. Superconducting penetration depth it is related to magnetic field penetration inside superconductors. What is the distance up to which magnetic field can penetrate inside the superconductor? And the xi is called the superconducting coherence length, which is the smallest distance over which superconductivity can be maintained, this is also the size of the Cooper pair. So this leads to two important length scales inside the superconductor, the lambda and xi. Now let us look at the consequences of this lambda and xi for a